Hi, I'm Rebecca with the Institute for Justice. I'm here with IJ attorney Rob Piccola. Rob is going to tell us a little bit about something called the Shelby County Environmental Court. Rob, what is this and how does it relate to our newest case?
Well, thanks so much, Rebecca. The Shelby County Environmental Court is in some ways really a misnomer. You think of the term court, you think that there will be witnesses sworn in on the stand and that they'll give testimony under oath, that testimony will be recorded, that those recordings will go into a court file that you can access, and that there will ultimately be findings of fact and conclusions of law that determine your case so that you can appeal it if you don't agree with the order. None of that exists in the Shelby County Environmental Court. What it is a specialized court that originally served a function that addressed what I think we can all agree is a legitimate problem, which is addressing blight by way of vacant and abandoned properties, many of which had out-of-town owners, and having streamlined processes in place to deal with those vacant and abandoned properties was this original intention of a specialized court. Well, like so many instances where we see abuses of depriving people of due process at the hands of the government, the original intention and what it ultimately became, which is a place where people living in their homes that aren't abandoned, where they have had a family history for years, get caught up in this essentially black hole of a courtroom.
So walk us through how this worked for our client, Sarah Hohenberg. What happened with her? Was her home abandoned?
Well, Ms. Hohenberg is a longtime Memphian who had a beautiful home in a very nice neighborhood, and unfortunately was a natural disaster victim. A tree fell on her house. The repairs took a long time, and she ultimately ended up being sued in this environmental court. Well, in some ways, what happened, and this, by the way, was initiated nearly a decade ago. So what happened in that time is in some ways a mystery. Because there were not oftentimes findings of fact or conclusions of law or sworn testimony, it became a sort of black box. But what we do know is that she was ultimately deprived of a home that she owned outright. They took her home, threw her belongings in the street, and they issued a warrant for her arrest so that she was essentially a fugitive from justice, all without due process. So now Ms. Hohenberg was experiencing not only the loss of the property rights in her most important possession, her home, but also potentially her liberty at the threat of being jailed, all stemming from this tree falling and being caught in a courtroom that didn't allow her to have those due process protections that you would normally associate with a court.
And you mentioned this has been going on for 10 years. What did she do during this time? Did she try to address it on her own and try to fix the situation?
Yes, her family tried to help her. And of course, it was involved in a back and forth with the insurance company. I mean, you know how hard it is to get things done with a house, even under the best of circumstances, let alone, Ms. Hohenberg had health issues. She has suffered 2 strokes since this all got underway. And it's been difficult to meet these sort of changing goalposts that the environmental court sets. So there were those efforts, but again, part of it legally is always going to be somewhat of a mystery because the jackets, as they call them, which are essentially court files that they normally maintain, are often missing or non-existent for people who end up in environmental court.
Tell us a little bit about the Tennessee Neighborhood Preservation Act and how this relates to Miss Sarah's experience and what she went through.
Well, the Tennessee Neighborhood Preservation Act was a law that the Tennessee legislature passed that allowed counties in Memphis to have a streamlined process for dealing with abandoned and vacant properties. And again, if it had ended there, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation now. But in 2016, and you'll note 2016 is after they filed the lawsuit against Ms. Hohenberg in this court. So there was really no authority to begin with there. So in 2016 is when the state legislature said that you can go after occupied homes as part of this system. And so suddenly you have cities like Memphis with a real blight program, a real blight problem, but who can now have occupied homeowners who haven't left their house to just rot, are caught up in it.
Is what happened to Ms. Hohenberg a unique situation? Has this happened to others?
It has happened to others. And in fact, the Institute for Justice is representing another person caught up in this system who was living in a home, Mr. Joseph Hansen. Like Ms. Hohenberg, he lost the entire house as a result of this experience. They also threw him in jail during the course of his environmental court proceeding, and at least 2 times. And this is somebody as inconceivable and sort of mind-blowing as it seems, who had to go to jail because a tree fell on his home. It just is, it's shocking to the conscience.
What does IJ plan to do to fight back for Ms. Hohenberg and Mr. Hansen and others?
We're filing a lawsuit in federal district court arguing that this environmental court deprives them of their fundamental rights under the 14th Amendment to due process of law. There's certain minimal requirements under the Constitution that a court system has to fulfill in order to be compliant with those mandates from the Constitution, and this court doesn't even come close. So we're seeking a declaration in federal court that the court, as constituted now, is unconstitutional.
Is there anything else that you want to tell viewers about this case and why it matters to them?
This case should matter to any homeowner who is concerned about what process they are afforded before they could lose their home entirely. But moreover, honestly, it's for anyone who is concerned that the government can throw them in jail using a court system that is basically unrecorded and undocumented.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to explain this to us, Rob. I'm sure all of our viewers will be watching closely, and that's all the time we have for today.